It's nearly a ghost town. County crews putting up these signs for people to stay out of the water.
It's just really pretty.
30 dozens of dead fish and sick beachgoers. This
to taking 40 still living queen conch shells, telling the judge she did not know it was illegal.
Waves. Oh, wow, look. Right there. Hey there, buddy. Hey, you put you back now that I know you're alive and well.
dozens of dead fish and sick beachgoers. This dozens of dead fish and sick beachgoers. This
Hey guys, welcome myself back to my own channel. On today's video, we will be making a shell dress. We are starting off with this plain white dress that I got from the thrift store for $4.99. Let's get started. The first thing you need is your dress. The second thing you need are your shells. I have these plain white shells that I got from the Dollar Tree. I got a bunch of shells, different sizes and shapes. You need a bunch of shells, so when you think you have enough shells, you don't. So the first thing I do are glue these large shells to the chest area of the dress. Then I move on to the neckline of the dress, going in a black and white pattern with two different shells, all the way until I reach the waist. Individually gluing each shell onto this dress took a lot of patience and time. So I'm trying to be as careful as I can while making the pattern. If you do for some reason want to recreate this, just be very careful. This is hot glue and very hot shells, so just make sure you take precaution. So I'm just making sure I carefully follow the pattern all the way around the larger shells, all the way until I reach the bottom of the waist. So now that I've reached the bottom of the waist, I'm going to just section off each square into different size shells. So what I mean by this is I'm going to make a line of shells right where I want the section to stop, and I'm going to fill in each other square with the shells that I used to create the line, and each other square with white shells, just to create a black and white pattern going down. So once I finish the waist, it's time to move on to the bottom of the dress. So for the bottom of the dress, I am stuffing the dress with my rubber ducky house shoes, and I am just gluing one type of shell all the way down, following the straight lines that are on the seam. So while I did this, the camera moved a lot, so I'm sorry for all of this weird camera movement. So the reason why I wanted to stuff the inside of the dress was to make sure that the dress dried poofy like a Cinderella ball gown and not flat like a pancake on my body once it dried with the glue. So I'm moving on to a different section of the dress using different shells, creating a straight line, and then filling in the rest of the lines with those shells. So I'm going to use 10-inch glue sticks that I bought off of Amazon. They're really thick and really long, and these are so helpful during this process because you don't want to keep refilling your gun with these small glue sticks, and it's better to just have really long ones, and it helps you in the long run. So once you have your glue sticks, now you can just finish up the section that you started. So I'm just going in a straight line, straight down with these small black shells and filling in all the way until I reach the other line of shells that I created earlier. And here I made the mistake of not filling in the dress all the way. So over the time I fill up the other side of the dress all the way before I glue the shells on so that it doesn't dry flat. So now we're moving on to the other side. We are going to take these white shells, and only 2 of them can fit in the row at once, the column at once. So what I do is I fill it up with 2, and then I go on top of them and stack them so that it's kind of this 3D effect, and it fills up all the extra space. So as you can see now, I filled up the rest of the dress so that it can remain poofy. So now I'm moving on with these large brown shells, going straight down in the same pattern. And once I'm done with those, I go back to the original shells that we used in the beginning, these blush colored ones. And after that one, I go back to the small dark ones, all the way until I finish the first half of the dress. So now that I finished the first half of the dress, I now have to flip the dress over and do the back. So I'm starting with the same pattern as I did in the front. I go from brown to dark brown to the white and back to the blush colored, if that makes any sense. So now I'm on the blush, and then I move on. I go to the white pattern, and then I go to the brown. Then I move on and go to the black dark shells again. So once I get the dress done, it's time to make my accessories. So what I do is I take my hot glue gun. I have this plain tan brown headband, and I'm just going to take some extra shells that I have and glue them onto the headband to make this shell headpiece. If you would like to see more of my dress creations, you can look at my other videos, go on my Instagram, follow me there, or follow me on TikTok. So after I open up all the shells, I get ready to glue the shells onto the headband. So I'm taking the end of the shell and I'm just gluing in a straight line. I'm going to place that directly on the headband. I'm going to place one at each side and then one in the middle. So when I place it on the headband, you can see that it's kind of tipping over, curving inward, and I don't want that, so I am just going to take a few other shells and stack it on the bottom to hold the shell in place while it dries. So now what I'm going to do is do the same thing, glue the bottom of the shell, glue it onto the headband, and I'm going to do the same thing for the middle and the other side. Making sure to place something right under it so that it could hold it up. And what I grabbed was this plastic hamburger toy, and it did the job. So next I grab my hot glue gun and I make sure to glue on the outside of the shell as well to make sure it's really stuck onto the headband. And then I grab these little bead pieces that I got off of Amazon, and I'm going to glue one directly in the middle of the center shell. On the opposite shell, I'm going to glue just a single pearl, and I will repeat the same thing on the other side. Okay, so once I finish the other side and add some other small shells, this is what it looks like. I'm going to add this tinier shell on top of the other center shell. So I'm just going to glue a line right up the tip of the other shell and glue that shell right onto there, making sure to use something to hold it up. After letting that dry, I take a larger conch shell and just glue it on the back of the two centerpiece shells so it could stand out and look more like a bigger headpiece. So after I finish my headpiece, it's time for me to move on to the shoes. So I have these plain tan shoes that I got from the thrift store for $5, and I'm just going to fill them up with shells. So the first thing I do is I'm going to line up the edge of the shoe with glue. And first I individually glued each sprinkle on the edge of that line. Individually gluing each sprinkle on there was very tedious, and I changed up the way I did it in the other shoe. Instead of individually gluing the sprinkles onto the shoe, I just glued the rim of the shoe, lined it up, and poured the sprinkles on top, and then removed any of the other sprinkles that didn't create the straight line that I wanted. So for now, I am on the first shoe, and I'm still individually gluing sprinkles all the way until I reached the end. So as you can see here, I switched up the thing, and now I am just gluing and pouring and then removing anything that doesn't make the straight line. So once I get that done, we are moving on to the shell part of it. I am just going to sit the shoe upright and then grab the darker colored shells and glue those on first. So I'm just adding glue to the shoe and then picking up smaller black shells, well, not black, darker colored shells, and gluing them onto the shoe, making sure that I make a sort of V pattern following the shoe and how it's already shaped, and just gluing them on that way. So right now I'm making this sort of V shape and then just filling it in with the extra shells. I'm just going to keep repeating this process until we finish the front half of the shoe. So once we get to the side, I'm using a different colored shell. I'm using the white ones. They're also a different shape. And then I am just going to continue using the white ones all the way around until I meet on the other side. And then for the heel, I am using the thick brown shells, and I'm gluing them directly onto the heel. So now I flip it over and I finish using the white shells, gluing in blotches, and then just placing the shells how I want them to be. So now that I'm done with that, I place one blush shell in the middle, and in the center of that blush shell I place another one of those pearl pins. And here is the finished shoe. Pull off those glue strings, and that's the look we're going for. So now we're just going to repeat that process with the other shoe. We're just going to glue the sprinkles on the edge of the shoe and knock off any of the ones that don't create the straight line. This entire process, from the dress to the headband to the shoes, is a very tedious process, and it takes a lot of patience. And then once I get that line all straightened out, I'm going to move on to the darker shells on the tip of the shoe, adding the blush color shell on the very tip, and using the white shells on the side of the shoe. Making sure to get every part of the shoe covered in shells. Flipping it over, getting the other white side done, and then doing the brown colored heel. Then on the very tip, adding that pearl. And now here's the finished look. So here is the completed look with the dress and the headband. Thank you guys so much for watching this far. Like, comment, subscribe for more, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.